Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saturday night. And we are back once again with Space Fam. It's been a while. So it's been about 6 weeks since we've had a show, but I'm thrilled tonight to have some of the best folks in the world to sit and talk about climate change, climate science, everything that's going on out there. There's a lot of folks that still look at everything that's out there, the facts that you can look through, and all the science that's out there, and they still have questions. And so there's literally no one better in the world. People have climbed to the top of the highest mountains. They've flown and done backflips and made us all look bad. Jason, I'm talking about you. And the amazing work that like Tracy does. Everyone here, incredible group of people. Tracy, we hope that we can keep you. It looks like that you're in the mountain. You said that you were in the mountains tonight, and you came in last minute. So I'm glad to see that you're here.
Yeah, I'm so glad that I got on. Actually, my phone won't. I mean, my computer won't link, so I'm on my phone. So I'm sorry about the vertical, but I'm so happy to be here.
No worries. No worries at all. So we're going to go through everybody and say hello to everyone tonight. Tracy, I'm going to go through out in alphabetical order like I tried to do. So I'm going to give it to you first. Let everyone know who you are, what you do, and your expertise in this field of climate science.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Tracy Fanara, and I am an environmental engineer. Sorry, I'm noticing that my hat's all crooked. I've worn a hat all day, so I can't really stop from doing
It's completely fine.
But I have a BS, ME, and PhD in environmental engineering from the great University of Florida. And I worked as a research scientist in private academia, and now I manage United States coastal ocean modeling for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
I'm personally a big fan of NOAA. We do a lot of work where I work at Space Foundation with the Science on the Sphere. That's where we show everything from things throughout the solar system to storms that have been happening up to a couple hours ago. So we're big fans of NOAA. It's very close to us. And actually, it's in Boulder. We're quite literally, I think, the entire rest. Graham just said in our private chat, SOS is awesome. I went from one for my living room. So we have this big, beautiful thing that was exactly the reason that I became a volunteer at Space Foundation. I was able to do tours of the solar system, but also we are able to show storm systems and everything that's going on Earth on the SOS because of NOAA. And then we can show the rest of the solar system because of NASA. So it's a really incredible thing. But that's all based in an amazing place called Boulder, which a couple of our guests are there from there tonight. So next we're going to go to Dr. Ulyana Horodyskyj-Pena. Pena.
Not pina colada, Ron.
Pena colada. Get lost in the rain. See, you get lost in the rain a lot. We quite literally got lost in the rain together in Africa, which was super awesome, in the rainforests of Africa. So Ulyana does some amazing things, and I can't wait to talk in depth later about the cool things that we've got to do together, from me getting through the local place to be if you really want to show off as a hiker, which is Manitou Incline that we did together a long time ago, all the way up to Kilimanjaro. She's been a great friend and an amazing inspiration. And so Ulyana, I want to talk about what you do. You're a glaciologist, you're a geologist. I want to talk about the amazing work that you've done in Nepal, which kind of even led me on my trek to Nepal. So let's talk about that first, all the awesome stuff that you do.
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. I'm calling in from Broomfield, Colorado, where you may have heard we were on the news today because a plane engine fell apart. But I, like Ron said, I'm a glaciologist and geologist. I got my PhD from the University of Colorado in Boulder. Then I went on to do a postdoc for the Snow and Ice Data Center. Got to go with Jason to Baffin Island, amazing expedition. And then I started up Science in the Wild, which is an adventure citizen science initiative to get people immersed outdoors, really learning about the landscapes that they're trekking through or climbing through. So that was the idea behind it, just born out of spending all that time in Nepal and doing my PhD work, and having people help me along the way and turning that kind of into this business idea and opening science up to more people. And I'm also at the moment a visiting professor at Colorado College, as a private college in the Springs where Ron's at. And then also I started doing some remote work with the Alaska Climate Research Center at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks, helping them out with understanding how the climate is changing in one of the fastest changing places in the world, up in the Arctic.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And next, we always love him. Graham Lyle's been on the show before, and he does amazing work all around. So Graham's degree, I believe, if I remember correctly, is in geology. But then you have I know that it's an astrobiology certificate or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. I think that's correct. Correct? Am I right on that one?
That's correct.
Okay, cool. I remember we talked about that. So I know you do amazing work all around, and one of the reasons I want to bring you in is like, one, you have that knowledge, but then there's also something we want to talk about that we see maybe throughout, say, our like this zone that we have in the solar system, is that there's this place where it's absolutely perfect to have life that we call the Goldilocks zone, and then we can see what we call, what's something that's very popular here. And that's one of the ways that we look at the weather that's on our planet, and we see it on Venus. And on Venus, it's a runaway greenhouse effect. We've all heard that term before, and there's possibly still life there. And then we look at a place that's uber cold like Mars. So there's these pieces that you have, and I kind of want to tie those together, and that's the reason why we want to bring you in this conversation. How the life through our solar system can survive, can possibly exist. And then what we need to do to make sure that, we don't screw this up before our time. So I want to kind of throw that to you and kind of talk about that a little bit before we get it to Dr. Reimuller.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, there's a lot that we're learning about our planet because of space exploration. And in some ways, this knowledge that we now have of our changing climate and our changing world is because of looking at worlds like Venus with its runaway greenhouse effect, and looking at Mars, which lost most of its atmosphere and its magnetic field and is now very cold and has a lot of radiation at the surface. But there's a lot we don't know about life yet, which is why those of us in the realm of astrobiology are trying to figure out, how does life begin? Is there more than one way for life to start? Did life start here on Earth or come here from somewhere else? Did life here ever go somewhere else like Mars or Venus? What was the history of life on our planet? How did life change along with our planet? Life and our planet are very intermingled and tied together now. And so for me, it's kind of been this lifelong thing building up into getting more and more into the philosophy and the science of astrobiology. Even as a young kid, I loved Carl Sagan's Cosmos. I loved watching things like Star Trek Next Generation and other science fiction movies and shows, and just about what alien life might be like. And that kind of drove me, in my future. When I started college, I actually started in biology. I thought I would wanted to be a wildlife biologist. I really wanted to go out in the savannah and take pictures of animals and learn about them. But then I started learning about microbiology and biochemistry and started nerding out on some of these things. And so I then studied chemistry as well. And then I studied astrophysics. And then I got into geology. And so I kind of couldn't really choose along the way. I had a little bit of everything. And that's kind of helped me a lot to then kind of bring these different pieces of knowledge together as an astrobiologist to think about some of those bigger questions I'm involved with.
Beautifully stated. And so Dr. Jason Reimuller is going to be our next guest tonight. And he is an astronomer. He is a brilliant scientist, and he is the creator of Project Possum. And that's actually how Dr. Horodyskyj had introduced me to him. And we got to meet some years ago, became great friends. And also between I, and Rachel English, were able to create the Out Astronaut project, which has been a wonderful piece of my life. And so, Jason, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, one, what it means to be an astronomer, and a little bit about Project Possum and this work that you bring us all into. I think it's like 63, is it 53, 63? Some crazy number of countries now are involved in this thing that you are the executive director of. And I know that you are always humble and smile about it. Like, it's not just me, it's this thing that I get to work with and I'm a part of. And Uly's the same way too, with what she does with Science in the Wild, and Graham and Tracy as well. Everybody is very humble about the incredible work that they do, but you all changed lives in so many amazing ways, and that's why I wanted you on the show tonight. So, Dr. Reimuller, let's talk a little bit about what you do and what it means to be an astronomer, and a little bit about Project Possum, and we'll talk more about it in the second hour as well.
Well, Ron, I don't know how to say anything on top of that introduction. Thank you, Ron. And again, so I'm the executive director of what is now the International Institute of Astronautical Sciences, and I think we only have 46 countries. So we're hopefully getting into the 50s or 60s soon. But fundamentally, we see,
only 46 countries.
Yeah. So the program, it has a number of research tiers in a number of fields now, and the hope is to get more people represented and engaged in science through the incredibly inspiring power of space, and in particular human spaceflight, astronautics. But the two programs we have now, wonderfully named from furry animals, Project Possum and Project Otter. Project Possum was really an extension of my own doctoral dissertation from the University of Colorado. So it's a similar academic background, aeronomy. A lot of people don't know what aeronomy is. It's basically upper atmospheric science. So mesosphere and the thermosphere region of our atmosphere. That's which is above our stratosphere. So Project Possum was formed as a research organization to try to better characterize our mesosphere, which we find is a very little known part of our world, of our atmosphere, but also the most sensitive area, and a place that we think can tell us an awful lot about the atmosphere as a whole. And it's through the atmosphere that so many of the other effects of global climate are affected. So we can get into that a little bit later. But thank you, Ron.
Yeah, no, I mean, wonderful introduction to everyone here tonight. So let's start with the questions. Most people out there are confused by what this is and what climate science really is. Everyone hears the term global warming. Well, it's global warming, and then there was somebody that's brought in a snowball and threw it in the middle of, I don't know what happened with that in Congress. It's weird. But people think because for so long they heard global warming that they thought that's what it was. And it's really climate change. And the warmer that things get, crazier things get around the world in ways that we can't really, that most people can't explain, but you all can. So I kind of want to talk about that to start. So let's talk about the beginning of this. What is the difference between weather and climate? And that was the thing that really changed it for me. I watched Cosmos, and I think it was like the third episode of Cosmos. They beautifully stated, Neil is walking with a dog, and he says, and a dog is meandering in different ways. He says, here's weather, and then over time is climate. And that really put everything together for me. And it went from me not caring about climate at all to being completely agnostic about it to like really saying this is something that we need to work on. And for maybe people out there haven't seen that yet. So I want to kind of go to the experts here and give each of you maybe 2 minutes to talk about it. And I'll go kind of in order here. And Dr. Fanara, I'll go to you first and allow you to talk about it for a minute. And you are muted. Let me see if it was me that muted you. No, it wasn't me.
I'm back. Okay, so
and I'm back.
Exactly what you said. The difference between weather and climate is really just time scale. So when we weren't allowed to say climate change, which was the weirdest thing that whatever.
Not anymore. He's gone.
Right. So now, back then, even still, we would say, data sets over time, and that would be climate change, even though no one's saying the words climate change. And global warming is part of climate change, but it's not everything. Yes, the temperature is rising, and because of that, so many other things are happening. And it really, the carbon sequestration, I think, is a big thing that people miss. The ocean acidification and all the impacts. I don't think that people really realize how much calcium is in not only limestone, but in our shellfish and everything like that. And as that pH decreases, organisms from the bottom up are going to be impacted. And we don't need them. I mean, we need them. Sorry, the opposite. They don't need us. So that's something that humans really have to focus on, is this very frail network, this pyramid that we put ourselves on top of, and understanding that we depend on everything else surviving, and not just the organisms, but also the systems that kind of dictate those organisms. It kind of went in a few different directions, but the bottom line is, you're right, it's just time scale.
Yeah, I mean, beautifully stated. Thank you very much. And it's something that I've learned from my friends that are on the show tonight. So next, I want to go to Uli. And so, Uli, you literally travel around the world. You and Ricardo do doing different things, either from Science in the Wild or. And I will never get this right because you decided to do like a bunch of S's in a row. I feel bad. I'm like, it's. I sing a song on a summit about science, and I'm never sure if I get it right. So I'll give it to you. But seriously, I mean, there's what you do is you take people out, and also the team as well. Like you, Patrick, one of our mutual friends, you go out and you show people, and people can go and climb mountains with you here in Colorado, or they can go to other parts of the world. I one of the reasons I went to Nepal was what I saw of what you had done, but we didn't get to go there together. We went to Kilimanjaro together. But as you take folks up that are even citizens, we get to like check out the science and what's going on. But that's been a big thing for you. It was even your part of your doctorate. So I want to talk to you about your work as a glaciologist and what it means. And I want to also tie that back to what people should know. I mean, everyone thinks that it's this big conspiracy, that there's a bunch of money. Like, how huge is your mansion, Uli and Jason?
I mean, sitting in my corner office, meaning
yes.
I'm sitting in a chair in the corner of my room right now.
Yes, and that's exactly the same thing. Like, I've been in Jason's apartment. I've been in Uli's room. I've been close to Graham's. Nice. They're all nice places, but they are not millionaires. There's not all this money that you think's been thrown at them. And Tracy, I don't think there's much difference there with you either. And people have this idea that they think that the people that are on, you're talking to the experts that are literally in news and in so many different ways are reached out to about climate science and what they put into this. And people think that it's this total different thing that it's not. So for me, that's something that stands out to me. But Uli, I definitely want to talk about the awesome work that you do and what it means to be a glaciologist and the work to sit at the top of the bottom of the world and look at these glaciers, shrink and swell and shrink and swell and shrink and swell and shrink and swell, and what that means.
Well, I feel like I'm going to be a historian soon. I mean, the way these glaciers are just melting worldwide. So the idea behind Science in the Wild, it was born out of like doing a PhD, living abroad in Nepal for a year on a Fulbright fellowship, where it wasn't just about the science, but it was about connecting with the people, the mountain communities. And you know this, Ron, from being up on the base camp trek, the way that people make a living up there. And so it was a way to be able to apply science. It's really important for me to be able to apply the science to really understand what is changing and can we do anything about it. And so the thing with Science in the Wild that I really wanted to get across was transparency. Don't just take someone's word for it because you see it in the news media. When you see those graphics of all the time, you see temperature graphs for climate change. Come with us into the field. Take a look at those weather stations. Look at how we get the data. Transparency is so important. So that was kind of what I was thinking when I initially launched Science in the Wild, to bring people out and see it for themselves. And one thing I've noticed is it's quite moving for a lot of people when, for example, they'll see a collapse of one of the ice walls in a lake that we're working on a glacier. I'll take people out on a raft with life vests in the middle of this glacier. You're on a lake. This is supposed to be a massive solid ice. What is this lake doing here? And then it really brings to life, what is at stake and what is changing. So I think that experience, and I know Jason can probably speak to it from his experience on Baffin Island with me as well, just how moving, how unbelievable it is to be in these places experiencing it, and how you want many more people to be able to experience this. And so when it comes back to also weather and climate, so I teach about this at Colorado College. And so when you mentioned that snowball run, I actually did that.
I've seen it.
Yeah, we did
Yep.
We did a mock Congress in my class.
Yes, you did.
And then when the students were least expecting it, I ran out and grabbed some snow and made a snowball. And I threw it in the middle of the classroom saying, I don't believe in any of this climate change stuff. And the kids are just shocked. They're like, what's happening? I'm like, this actually happened. And they showed the YouTube clip. So again, that kind of experience, like it's shocking that for the students to realize, wait, someone actually thought this, that because we have snow, or because Texas, for example, is undergoing this horrible storm right now, means that climate change isn't real. So one thing I wanted to say in regards to weather and climate is also think about it from the perspective of mood and personality, right? So every day your mood can change depending on many different factors, right? But your personality overall pretty much stays the same. And so we're talking about weather, we're talking about that day to day. Think about your mood day to day. And then where we're talking about climate, that's that long-term personality.
I mean, beautifully stated. And I'll tell you right now, so I did the Everest Base Camp trek, and I didn't think, I mean, I knew that by that time, I was already like very definitely in that realm of, I understand this is something that's really serious. And then it was something that along the way, I ended up behind because I was a solid, probably 80 to 100 pounds heavier than everybody else that was on this trek with me, right? And it was a huge thing for me. My mom had passed away. I had her ashes. Well, I was trying to bring her ashes with me. Along the way, they got lost. There was a lot to kind of that story. But it was the most amazing experience I ever had in my life. However, as you go, I was with our main trek guide, which was this man who discussed the fact that they bring the kids from the area through that area to teach them about climate change and what they're seeing through the Everest Base Camp trek. They take them to the bottom of the top of the world to show them all the changes. Now, this was, we think that we were one of the first groups that went after this major earthquake. I think it was earthquake. Yeah, earthquake that had happened through the area. And so there was a lot that had already happened. But when you get there in Ulyana, this was part of the work that you did. You see, as you get close to Everest Base Camp, it's not all ice anymore. There's water there. That's way too high. That is way, way, way too high for you to see water. There should be nothing liquid there. I don't care if it's September or not. And it's beautiful water, but you're like,
something's not right about this.
That's the bottom of the top of the world. That's the second largest mountain or peak in the world, and that's the biggest one. And I can barely see it through the clouds. And then you see, and there, it's beautiful water, but it's still enough to just be terrifying that it's this big ice ball as the ice is melting and things are changing. And that was a part of the work that you did as you saw the shrinking ice and as it became more and more water. And the thing is that he told me directly at Maskey, which was the person that was the guide, and that I was with, is like, Ron, had it been 10 years ago, you would have seen no water at all here. None. Like, I've watched this. This is not something there. Maskey is not rich. There is absolutely no person that guides you through the mountains of Nepal that is loaded, that is trying to tell you that this is like, I'm a multi-millionaire. And absolutely that water was there 10 years ago. That's not what it is. That's nothing of what you think is the truth about this. If you're like skeptical, for most people, is what it really is there. It to really be presented with the truth by someone that makes on the equivalent of probably $1,000 a year American. That puts everything in a whole different perspective to you, especially when it's the most life-changing experience that you've ever had. So that's something from me for others. So Uli, you might have something else to say about that before I go to Graham. So I just want to share that. Though.
No, I mean, for what you're saying, like as far as the glaciers up there, you can think of them as these water storage towers, right? And they're in their frozen form. And yes, they're melting more and more. And while that might be a good thing in the beginning because we're getting a lot more water into the rivers for drinking water for millions of people, eventually those water storage towers are going to dry up. And not only that, climate change isn't fair. You know, the places that are wet get wetter, places that are dry get drier. So there's been talk, you know, of like, if there's going to be another world war, potentially it's going to be the fight over water and survival. Something we talk about a lot in my class is about climate refugees, the folks along the coast too, because where we are in Nepal, it's inland. And that's a different situation where the folks there are dependent on the water for drinking. But then when you get to the coastal regions where sea level rises, another whole thing we can talk about, people are being displaced already. This is happening now. It's not something in the future. It is, we're seeing symptoms of this all around. And the people, again, who are living there, who are at the source of seeing this, they have so many stories to tell. And I think it's important as a scientist to not just do the measurements and observations, but hear the stories from the people, the communities that I work in.
Beautifully stated. And before I go to Graham, I see, Tracy, that you are nodding your head a lot. So I think you might have something to say on it, because I know this is something that's close to your heart too. And I don't want to like bounce around that until I go to Graham and Jason.
Totally everything that you were just saying, like 100%. Like, people don't realize you don't like immigration now. Well, people are being displaced already.
Wait, yeah.
Impacts already. This is happening, and it blows my mind when people try to deny climate change at all, because we're seeing, I mean, we have saltwater encroachment, down in Florida. We're seeing these impacts. We see, I mean, Miami's got a lot of problems, but they're bringing in fill every single day. And then we have fires in the Everglades. It's not just like our prescribed fires. We have wildfire, like, we are getting droughts in Florida, and the people don't even know. Like, our citizens aren't even aware when we're in a drought situation. And we're one of the states with, I think we have the second most rainfall. Like, it's just, I don't know. It just blows my mind that people don't understand that when something goes up, it either stays up or it comes down, but it's going to have an impact. But sorry, I'm just saying, yeah, like everything you said, spot on. And I really like that mood and personality thing.
Yeah, I mean, well, and that's, I mean, Uly's incredible at what she does. And so what I want to kind of point on right now is that, Graham, your thing is really looking at life, period. And, what's here, we're lucky that we have life here, and we're going to figure things out. We hope that we figure things out here, but there's also, whenever we look out, I mean, for me, whenever I really took this seriously was when I was presented Venus. Like, so here's a greenhouse effect that's been, it's run heavily. It might have destroyed life. Life might have been so much different there. And that's kind of something that is a big thing for you, like looking at life out there. But there's also, I mean, you look at those of us that really look out at what might be out there, the writers, the journalists, the scientists, the psychoms, everything. Well, there could be this, there could be the great filter, there could be all these different things. But we might be in that point right now where we ruin everything. There's been a movie about it by one of the greatest directors in the world, Christopher Nolan. And he talked about, like, well, we screwed it up. We destroyed all of our crops. We've done all this. Life can be fortuitous. I mean, it can beat down the walls. It can continue, and it's continued before. We've had so many great dyings, and life has continued. But we are the first that are, it's sentient life, and we could fix this. Can we get over our own personal arrogance to try to fix this? Can we be what everyone else other than me, because I can still be arrogant, everyone else that's on this show tonight can be? Can we do this? Can we fix this? And what's it going to take as being a life form that says we have the ability to fix this for us? It's not an asteroid that's screaming at us. It's, can we make less trash? Can we take better care of each other? I mean, what do you think as someone that's like, this is kind of your thing, like life in the entire universe, and the one life here, it's kind of screwing things up a little bit. Can we be better?
So much to unpack here. Can we? Yes. Will we? We don't know. I think, all of us here and probably everyone watching hope so. We hope that we can make a positive impact and be good stewards, good citizens of this biosphere. But yeah, there's so much we don't know about life. We could be alone in the universe. Life might only have ever happened here on Earth. As maybe sad and scary as that sounds, we might have an imperative to either allow life to continue and help it to spread, or we might be the ones who are ending life's one opportunity. Now, as an astrobiologist, I have to admit we could be alone. As someone who loves alien sci-fi and thinking about possibilities, I don't think we are alone. It feels like we can't be, just given all the possibilities out there. But there's still a lot for us to learn. And we as a species are very, very young. You have to think, our genus that we come from has only been around for about 2.5 million years or so. And then our species has only really been around for about 200,000 or 250,000 years. Not a very long time. And if you look at our technology and how we've been changing in our understanding of our place in the world, in the solar system, in the cosmos, we've only been making these jumps in the last few centuries, really. It's only been a few millennia that we've really had written record. And so we are very young, and we have a lot to learn, as any youngster does. I certainly made my fair share of mistakes as an adolescent person. And maybe we as a species aren't even really into our adolescence yet. Maybe we need to shake off some of these problems that we're developing for ourselves and start thinking more like mature beings. And so there's a lot of potential for us. And one reason I think we do have some of these issues where you have people who don't understand or don't want to accept what's going on with the science of climate change, part of it is that we live very short lives. Not a lot of change happens to the climate or to the geological record in 70 years, or however long we might be fortunate enough to live. And so we don't even have a really good working memory for long duration things in our own lives. And so it's really hard for us to kind of perceive these long scale changes. It's really through science and applying science that we've learned these things. But I think one of the coolest examples of us learning about our own impact on the world and then doing something about it comes from back in the 1960s, when we were realizing that our contribution of chlorofluorochemicals, CFCs, into the atmosphere from our aerosol spray cans and a bunch of other industrial sources was destroying our ozone layer. And part of that was because of space exploration. We were actually looking at the Earth from space using Earth observing satellites, and we were seeing these issues with the ozone layer being depleted. And because of that, governments actually worked together around the world. Our government here in the US worked to clean up our air and get rid of those CFCs as best as they could. It didn't entirely get rid of the problem, but it definitely fixed it a lot. And it's a great sign that when we are working together, we actually can fix these large-scale problems that we're creating. Now, one thing you mentioned was the movie Interstellar. It's a beautiful
one of my
story.
faves. I'm sorry.
It's a beautiful story.
I love it, but also,
But
yeah.
If we can travel through a black hole to another star system we've never been to before, to a world that is nothing like the Earth, completely different physical characteristics than the Earth, and we can terraform that planet, then we can terraform the Earth. We could fix all those problems here.
Yeah, there's plenty of people that say that, yeah.
That's part of the issue right now with where we're going, with our changing climate, with how we're polluting our world through a lot of our industrial activities, just all of the garbage that we're creating, the plastics that we're just dumping into the environment. A lot of what we need to learn how to do is some of this large-scale international governmental work of getting through the policy of saying we're going to fix it, but then we also need the science for implementing these large-scale geoengineering tactics that will help us to fix some of these problems we're creating. And I love.
Wait a minute, you talking about the fact that there's like science is going to come on in, man? It's going to do that, and it's going to be DARPA, and I don't know if we can deal with DARPA, man. People kill me with that. Like it's going to be a Gerard Butler movie. Is what they tell us is going to happen. It's going to be like Roland Emmerich's going to be like here, and it's going to freeze up to the fact until you run through a door and close it, and the freezing is going to. It's people lose their mind about that the government has an idea to do things and that the government has paid you all to say these things. Has anyone ever been paid enough from the government that it's been enough to like pay for your own gas? Has anyone ever been paid by the government at all in a way that was significant enough to like change your life? Like what most people think. That's what I thought.
Not much, but
Oh,
definitely
you
like,
just grinned and giggled.
like state university football coaches, they make a lot of money. So we have our priorities in a certain place, I guess.
Yeah.
But one thing, though, if I can, real quick. So this
course,
whole
of course.
snowball. So that was a few years ago. It was a senator named Jim Inhofe from Oklahoma who brought this snowball onto the Senate floor and used it as though this is an argument that climate is not changing, that our world's not changing because he still can pick up a snowball in the winter. And that was, a great moment for the media because you can see this picture of him doing this. It gets a lot of shock reaction, and a lot of people knew about that. But one thing you didn't hear about, most likely, is another speech that was given right after that by another senator named Sheldon Whitehouse, who spoke about this issue of the weather and the climate and why bringing a snowball into the Senate is an absurd attempt to diminish what we really do know about the science. And so even though we do have some people who are provocationists, who like those little moments of media spotlight, we also have other people who are working for the good. And as hard as that is to hear, I know there's a lot of anti-government sentiments going around right now, a lot of anti-authority sentiments going around in our society right now. There really are a lot of us out there who want to do things better and make things better. And in general, like if you, it's hard right now during the pandemic, we're not seeing our neighbors as much as we'd like to, but if you go and actually, talk to your neighbors and get to know people around you, most people are genuinely good. They want to live good lives together, but a lot of people aren't being given the information in a way that helps them to understand what's going on. And a large part of that is because of our issues right now with politics and this divide that we've created amongst ourselves.
Ron, you're muted.
You're muted, bud.
Damn it! So the next person I want to go to is Jason. Jason, agronomy, everything that you do is it's something that a lot of people don't understand, that there is different parts of our atmosphere that we don't totally understand yet. And that's one of the reasons that you created what you created with Project Possum. So there's a level that's too low that we can't really get from from satellites. It's a little too high that we can't get it from planes. And we don't really truly understand it. And that's one of the things that we had from that. And it came from something that I love because it kind of came from cosmology and it kind of changed things. And that's something that you ran with. You worked with constellation earlier in your career, and then you kind of ran with this later with what you work with. Tell people what agronomy means to what we're trying to figure out right now, because I love this. That's part of what we do. Like, we get ourselves in spacesuits and we're sitting in an awesome sim with the best cameras in the world, trying to learn how to take pictures of this part of the atmosphere that people have never really truly understood before. And that's what you kind of do. And there's so much more to it, but that's such a different thing than people might know. And it completely changed your life, and it made such a big piece of what you are doing to change and help the world. And I know that it's something that you're very passionate about.
Thanks, Ron. I want to extend a little bit on what Graham was saying. One of the main reasons that Uli and I, in particular, do what we do with science and wild and with Project Possum is citizen science. How do we get people engaged, represented, involved in science? Because there is a disconnect. There's a disconnect because when you go to a conference like the American Geophysical Union, for example, there is as close to you'll ever have to anything of a consensus of how we're affecting our climate, global climate change. Yet when you talk to anyone out on the street that gets their news from whatever mainstream channels you happen to have, there's a complete disconnect. And so I could speak for Uli's project as well here, is how do we get people engaged and empowered and contributing to funding, to doing, to publishing professional peer-reviewed science from a citizen science perspective. So there's not this perception of this government scientist in the ivory tower that people can't relate to, that anyone can find a way to make meaningful contributions. And so this is especially powerful now. And I think we're up against something like we had, like the cigarette companies, for example, when when more and more scientific evidence was coming out that cigarettes were hazardous to your health, well, the companies realized that they didn't have to play for a checkmate. They didn't have to win the argument. All they had to do was put just enough doubt in the public's mind. They just had to play for a stalemate. And the public they knew that the public would not vote to change anything if they thought that the verdict is still out. Well, the verdict is not still out. The verdict is out there. Like, we know we are facing an existential threat, and we might not be able to see it. We not be able to perceive on our timescales year to year how people lives changed because of a warming climate. But every bit we delay now compounds the issue forward, creates things like positive feedbacks. Uli's profession's, much more involved with, with positive feedbacks as applied to glaciers. But this will snowball and accelerate the effects. So I don't know. Some people just want to be comfortable in life. I don't want to be that first class ticket holder that wants to sit back and enjoy the symphony on the Titanic. I'd like to be able to tell the next generation that we tried and we did our best. So the projects that we have, and my background's more in airborne remote sensing. A lot of POSSUM involves looking up, and this is what you introduced me with, is aeronomy. What is the mesosphere? What does our upper atmosphere tell us? But a bit of my work also has been done with glaciology from airbornes, with NASA's Ice Bridge experiment. That was indeed half of my dissertation, and it made me think of more of this. What I looked at and modeled was from an aircraft. It was a P-3 Orion. It had a ground penetrating radar that could map the bottom of glaciers. It had a scanning LiDAR that could map the top of glaciers. We coupled it with satellite information, ground observations. We had a gravimeter. And we could characterize year to year the volumetric change of these size caps. My particular contribution was done on a feeder glacier called Cermak-Avanarlik. It was a feeder into the greatest outlet glacier, Jakobshavn on Greenland, which about 7% of all of Greenland's ice mass would exit from. And it was believed that the iceberg that did sink the Titanic, going back to Titanic, did indeed come from this glacier. Well, there's no way any ice could ever come down that far south now from that glacier. Now I look back just 10 years from when I wrote that dissertation, 10 years, and quite a lot of that glacier is no more. Indeed, what I had studied just 10 years ago just doesn't exist. And you see how this affects people's change already. The Greenlanders there that you talk to, some can't hunt in the same lands, that they're used to, to support their villages here. I mean, the effects at these communities are very, very impactful. So we think, when you think about weather, we're not as sensitive to the small changes that we have year to year from where people live, but the ongoing changes, decade to decade, and how that will propagate forward is being changed. And it is a simple amount of how we absorb more heat into the planet. That glacier that we had now no longer exists. Well, now it's exposing black rock, and that black rock is going to be absorbing more of the sun's radiation into the earth. So these are kind of the positive feedbacks. And the more heat we get in the earth, the more heat we get into the water. This is why we're seeing more of the fires in the west of our country and more of the hurricanes in the east and more of our arable land drying out, which makes it harder and harder to feed people. So the
more intense things. Yes, sir.
Yes.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but I mean, yes, I just want to agree with what you were saying. And I mean, that's kind of it. I mean, so people say that science is just not everyone agreeing. So everyone says, well, this is a consensus. And so I know that there's a bunch of smile. I mean, everyone literally smiled at that when I said that. Everyone's like, oh, it's a consensus but amongst scientists. That's not really what this means. That everyone accepts the science of this, of what it is. And then people say science isn't this, science isn't that. So we understand this. What is it that professionals know, that people that have studied this, that have got their PhDs, that they understand this in a way that everyone... I've watched a YouTube video and I think that I know better than this. And what I want to do is I want to share with people the difference between what you think it is when you watch a YouTube video to what it really is to do true, honest research, what you know, to go through so many years of school, like everyone here has. And I mean, we're talking about 10 years plus, possibly for many of you, for you to really, truly know what it is. And why do people think this? Why do they accept it? Where is this point where it goes from, I accept science? I'm going to tell you that today there is going to be a full solar eclipse. You're going to buy glasses for it. You're going to go out in a specific time, and you are going to accept that what I tell you is real science. And you're going to believe me as an astronomer. But as a climate scientist, they're going to think that what you're saying is not correct in comparison. The doctors, all of you doctors, are not going to be the person to believe, but it's going to be a politician that says this is a real thing. Why is this? Why is this what we see? And how can we help people truly accept what it is that you do as professionals? So we just lost Graham for no reason that I can tell. So Uli will go to you first, and then I'm sorry, Dr. Fanara will go to you first, and we'll go to Uli.
Okay, you said a lot right there, and the big thing is, you know, the obstacles, and scientists only want 0.1% of the population. Okay, so we're a very small percent. And I gave a talk last year at a national conference, basically lecturing the scientists in the room. I was one of the experts during the water crisis in Florida, dual harmful algae blooms, just wreaking havoc on recreation, economics, public health, because the toxin actually aerosolizes from red tide. And what I realized is that the scientists weren't speaking up. It was, you know, they didn't want the controversy on social media, and I was the one that was easiest to access. So I kind of dealt with it firsthand, and because of that, I had the opportunity to try different things to see what worked and what didn't work. And I learned a lot of lessons, and I learned them the hard way. But the biggest thing is that we as scientists have a responsibility to communicate science, not just, you know, preach about climate change, but start at the bottom, you know, at the dinner table, like, you know, talk about where salt comes from, or where cheese comes from, or why you don't drink bottled water. Just simple stuff that people can understand: the water cycle, nutrient cycles, carbon cycles, so people can start having a base of science. You know, a 60-year-old might not have had a science class in 50 years. I don't remember what I did yesterday, like, let alone, you know, like, we have to reteach science from the base up so that it's easier to understand these more complex topics like climate change, because climate change is huge. And I think it's intimidating for people because they don't know what they can do to make a difference. And the thing is, everything that they do makes a difference. And that's kind of, we really have to bring it home. And what they were saying about citizen science is the best way to do it, to get people hands-on. I had when I was at Moat Marine Laboratory, I just took the job at NOAA in August, but I had a website and smartphone application. We had 1.6 million users. In addition to that, I worked with NOAA on a cell phone microscope that we developed. And yeah, citizens take samples, and it's amazing to see the difference in education from prior to after.
Thank you so much. And we're going to go to Graham next, who's back. We don't know why we lost him, but Graham will go to you, and then we'll go to Uli.
So I actually was out for a minute. What was the question?
I don't know. What was the question, Graham?
Yeah, sorry, my Wi-Fi went out. I have no idea why. First time in our new place.
We're just talking in general about like how we connect with people and how people really think the truth or see the truth about what's actually going on with this, and how we can connect with them. And Dr. Fanara is doing a great job with that. So yeah, I was just kind of pinging you, and then we're going to go to Uli after that.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there as well. There's a lot of conversations we need to have with everyone. We need to connect, across our political divisions and try to understand why some of our beliefs run so deep as well, and why we're so staunchly unable to open our minds sometimes when we have a certain belief holding us back. There's a guy named Alex Epstein. He's very much a proponent of fossil fuels, and has argued from a philosophical standpoint against climate change and against climate science. But he's very well spoken and good in debate on the topic. One of my interns at Blue Marble Space Institute of Science last year, Emily Harari, she had a conversation with him via Zoom to talk about consensus and how someone from his position views scientific consensus and whether or not scientific consensus works, and how consensus works in government and other places as well. And those are important conversations that we need to have. We need to be talking with the same language. We need to understand each other's motivations and ideas and opinions, because otherwise we can't really move forward. We can't progress, and we can't begin to address any of our issues if we can't at least have a basic conversation with some decency and some rationality for each other. And so there are ways to connect with lots of people, and honestly, I think a lot of people are willing to have conversations. The hard part is when someone becomes angry, irate, and is unwilling to then engage in the conversation in a respectful manner, and that makes it really difficult. And so it's kind of like when you have to pick your battles. I honestly don't choose to battle with those people that often, because you're never going to win. It's like trying to have an argument on Facebook. You're never going to win. But I think it's still important that we try our hardest to have conversations when we can.
Graham, someone asked, does your beard have a climate?
It has a microclimate.
No, I'm sure it does. Beautifully stated, man. Thank you so much. Uli, I want to go to you next on this. So what do you think?
Yeah, this is a great conversation. And so to come back to who we are as scientists, so we're trained to be as objective as possible, to follow the facts and the evidence wherever it may lead, whether it's what we expect or not expect, right? And critical thinking is indeed quite critical. I understand science can be intimidating. It can be hard for people who didn't really get good science classes growing up, especially at that middle school, high school kind of age. So I like to teach people that whether they realize it or not, they're already scientists. They're constantly making decisions and assumptions. It is for human survival. It's built in, but it needs to be activated, right? And so that's why I love doing what I'm doing with Science in the Wild, is to have people really experience science for themselves, what it's about. These experiences are critical because through, traveling in these landscapes, it's science that sticks, if you will.
Love it. And we're going to go to Jason next before we go to our musical guest tonight, who's going to kick ass, take names, and I love Ricardo. And he's going to see what quite literally my favorite song ever. But Jason, I want to go to you real quick and ask you this question. So please share your thoughts on it.
Well, I don't have too much to add to what's been said here. I think Uli hit that really well. But how? Yeah, I want to emphasize a little bit more about how can we make this more accessible. How do you inspire people to be involved? And I think that comes down to representation and exposure. And I think there are a lot of communities, a lot of peoples that are never really exposed and never have representation. So the more we can do, and I think that is especially something that is a powerful possibility for citizen science, is new avenues to create representation and ways to engage people from when they're very young, so that they grow up with the fundamentals of how do you frame an art, how do you observe something, how do you analyze something, and how can you apply more of a scientific method. And I think that will serve our society better in the long run by allowing people to make more objective ways they filter the information that they received. So when we look at the International Institute for Astronautical Sciences, we have 3 active programs that are focused on underrepresented minorities in science. And Ron, you've been a big part in the Possum 13 for getting more young women involved, Out Astronaut for LGBTQ, and Space for All Nations. All of those are about empowering people to represent communities and getting people more involved in science.
Wonderfully stated, sir, as always. And we are waiting. And Uli is actually right now going for like our guy tonight. So it's been a while since we have actually had a musical guest, and he is wonderfully talented tonight. He's going to sing one of my favorite songs, which makes me happy. So we're going to do a break right now to do our musical guest from the conversation, not an actual break, but we're going to do it right now. Uli, is Ricardo ready?
Yeah, so what we're going to do is switch off my camera and Mike, get him on. And I think we're actually going to sing one together, and then your favorite song will come later.
Okay, that's fine. Do that next. It's not. I'll be here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. I'll see you in a minute here. I'm going to switch this off.
Okay. And away we go. One's down. So anyone like want to say anything about like how things are going? How are you? How's everyone? The quietness, like the thumbs up.
I mean, we just landed an incredible rover on Mars that has a helicopter. There's so much cool stuff going on right now.
Man. So
we just had the announcement that Europa Clipper will not be tied to SLS, which is incredible. It means we can actually get our 2024 launch window.
Yeah.
And so there's so much in space.
There's a lot going on. So we had 300 people today at the Space Foundation Discovery Center. We actually got to a point that we had to stop people coming in. Like we had to hit capacity. We've not seen that, which is super awesome. So it looks like we have Ricardo coming in with a thing here. So looks like that. Maybe.
I
can't sing either, which is great. Makes it even better. So we're trying here to see. I think I have recordings of Ricardo singing, so it'll work. I'm gonna remove him and bring him back in and see if it works. It worked earlier, so that makes us all kind of giggle right now. We hope. Tracy,
Hey.
how much longer do we get you? Oh, hey,
know. We'll
here we
see.
go.
Is it working?
We have Ricardo and his. We have his face and we have his microphone. So, and he's gone.
No.
Sorry, having some technical difficulty. It's just very slow. So we might switch to just my laptop, but let's try it once more.
Okay.
He is backstage, Ron.
He is backstage. Okay, let's go here. Bring it in. See if he comes up. Welcome to live production in 2021. Someone, Graham.
Yes, I did.
No. Not too sure what happened here. It was all fine earlier. Now it's just being weird.
Maybe that airplane engine falling down near Denver really
Yeah.
did cause some kind of Donnie Darko moment. Maybe we're all traveling back in time now. We don't even know it.
If anyone's seen the movie Tenet, I have no desire to move back through time. It made me physically sick to watch that film.
No, I have to watch it.
Have you seen it?
No.
Dude,
Over
I was,
like 3 times. Stand it.
I watched it and I was sick too. And I mean, it makes me weird. I mean, it makes me feel weird even thinking about it again. Because I was also sick and there was a lot of things going on. Anyway, yes. Oh, you're moving well now. And if you unmute you. So let's unmute you. Yeah, if you want to unmute yourself. You can hit unmute. Can you hear me?
There it is.
There we go. We can hear, but somewhat see you. The best face I've ever seen Uli make. Maybe not.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
All right, so maybe we should just do it from the laptop. Yeah, maybe it's too many. All right. How about now?
Yeah, as you can hear, let's see. Maybe yes, maybe no. Uli, I'm going to go to you. You can unmute.
If we do this, though, it'll echo quite a bit, right?
Well, I muted everyone else, so you should be fine.
Okay. Guess we will.
Go for it.
So, yeah,
Yeah, let's try.
from your laptop then?
I
Not
think-
from
Yep.
But we can't see you now, so let's move this.
Yeah, because you're muting it. So
Yeah, there you go. That looks great.
All right.
let me close this then.
Yeah, it was
Anyway.
working just fine in the dress rehearsal, so sorry about
3, 2, 1. Oh!
Hi, well, hi everybody. I'm Ricardo Pena. It's a little bit of music that I'm gonna have Ulyana help me out. This is a Beatles song called Norwegian Wood.
Nice.
I once had a girl, or should I say, she once had me. She showed me her room, isn't it good, Norwegian wood. She asked me to stay and she told me to sit anywhere. So I looked around and I noticed there wasn't a chair. I sat on a rug, biding my time, drinking the wine. We talked until 2, and then she said, it's time for bed. she worked in the morning and started to laugh. I told her I didn't and crawled off to sleep in the bath. And when I awoke, I was alone. This look had flown. So I lit a fire, listened to good Norwegian moon.
Fantastic room, everybody. Thank you so much to our singer tonight, pandemic legend Ricardo. Thank you so much for playing some music for us tonight. It's been so long since I've been able to have somebody on here to sing music. Man, it's been great. So glad to have you here with your beautiful voice. We're gonna do one later. He's gonna do one later for me. He's gonna play my favorite song ever. So I can't wait for that. It's gonna be like 8 minutes of awesome. So yeah.
All right.
So,
How's the sound? Is it good? Is it
no,
okay?
it sounded great. Actually, it sounded even better than earlier, honestly. So I'm super happy about
I
that.
think the laptop is better than the phone, so it worked
Yeah,
out.
that sounded great. I mean, it was so crystal clear. It sounded like you actually had like things connected to make it sound good. It sounded great. I was really happy.
We got a mic to amplify everything a little bit.
Cool. So he'll be back at what you think, like in about 45 minutes or so?
Yeah, about 40 minutes or so. He'll be back. Yeah.
All right.
In 45 minutes? Okay.
Fantastic.
All right.
Good.
Yeah, we love it. All right. So let's. What I want to do is we have an hour left. We have 45 minutes left. So we talked about climate science, which is awesome, but everyone here has amazing things that they do. And Dr. Fanara, what I want to do is I want to talk to you first about all the awesome work that you do. And because I know you have to go relatively soon because you're in the mountains of Georgia and you are on your phone tonight to see and hang out with us. So I want people to know, if you're new to the show, I mean, there's a lot of people that watch our show that may not know who you are. And I want to introduce them to you and the amazing work that you do. You're on TV, you're everywhere, you're all over the internet, you do incredible work. So I want you to share with them the work that you do, how they can find you before you have to leave us tonight. Maybe.
All right, can you guys hear me okay? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you now. I think you're good.
Okay. Awesome. And I just want to start with this. I've been told a lot by a lot of people that I need to focus on one thing so I can have just like one clear answer to what I do. But the more I learn about science, and I've seen it from a young age, the more I realize that you just can't do that. Everything is connected. And to solve any problem, you need it solved by multidisciplinary approach. So my projects range from harmful algae blooms to recently, my most recent publication was with NASA putting aquaponics in ISS, and then for moon habitat, we're talking about the protein, but the number 2 is going to be all about wastewater treatment using aquaponics, shrimp, snails, mussels, and water treatment is something that I'm really passionate about. Sustainable design, not growing up. I'm from Buffalo, but going to school in Florida and being there for the past 10 years, you see how we're mismanaging our land. And I saw like some of these, major crises coming from a mile away. So sustainable design, low impact development, retrofit. So basically mimicking the water cycle in an urban environment. So going back to urban environments and redeveloping them through engineering design, like biofiltration, green roofs, infiltration trenches, things like that. Now at NOAA, I'm using the modeling skills that I built throughout my careers to manage our United States models, and it's amazing. Like it's just so big, and it's perfect for me because I don't just have to focus on one thing. These models are microbial all the way to storm surge, and it's throughout the entire coast, and trying to model and protect human lives and livelihoods through these predictions. and on top of it, a changing world with climate change. And then just being on a huge team. I mean, I am so impressed and proud to be a part of NOAA. Like I can't say enough about the people that I've met, their passion to make the world a better place. You know, you hear this stuff about government work, and I have no idea where it's coming from, because I've never seen people work so hard and be so passionate about strangers, about the entire world. Like, it's just it's amazing. So my goal overall is to minimize the disconnect between scientists and the public, and so what I do outside of work is communication. I was on Mythbusters. That's the one that people usually bring up, but I've been on Mission Unstoppable, Awesome Planet, and right now I'm on a show called What on Earth on Science Channel, Weird Earth on Weather Channel, and SciQ on Fox. And the great thing about these shows is that it tricks people into learning. You know, they've really done a great job of taking, you know, these earth phenomena and making it mysterious and bringing you on this path through all these possibilities of what it could be, even though you know it's not. But you're learning about history and science and environment in the process. And I just think it's brilliant, and I'm so lucky to be part of that stuff. So follow me, Inspector Planet. You know, I in my page, I build stuff and I try to save animals. So
And you do wonderful at it. So next, love this. Apparently you have a rap song.
Oh yeah, and I rap about as it turns out. My first single is called Polar Ice Ice Baby. Check it out on YouTube. You get it? Polar Ice Ice Baby, you know. But yeah, and I mean it was really a dream come true. I ended up rapping on national TV and for Dr. Sylvia Earle. Okay, like one of my role models. Like the first time I meet her, I'm rapping in a crop top. Like, really? Like, that's, I'm sure she's never gonna call me again. But yeah. So if I was 19 and knew that was gonna happen, I would be very excited with my life.
Stop, collaborate, and listen, which is very serious. So I love that.
Bumble tape and listen. Yeah, you'll have to check it out.
Fantastic. So next I want to go to Uly. Let's I know you talked about it earlier. So what I want to talk about tonight is the amazing job that you do with Science in the Wild. I was very fortunate to know you whenever you put this all together, and it's become a very big thing for you, for the people that you've taken to the top of so many mountains, and the ability to take a regular person like myself and Sarah and everyone that's been friends of mine and the other people that you've taken up to teach them about what the world looks like at the top of the world and the way that these things are changing and the way they can see it. Like you start at a certain point and you're like, you're going to take a science experiment, and in a few days you're going to take another one, and it's going to very definitely teach you how different the world looks now. And it's you start at the bottom of a mountain and you get to the top of a mountain, and it's going to really change the way that you look at the world. And it's amazing what you do. So I want you to share that with people more in depth than you did a little bit earlier with what you do with Science in the Wild.
Yeah, so Science in the Wild, similar to like with Jason and his work with Project Possum, this was born out of a dissertation as well. So I spent 4.5 years on a PhD looking at changes on glaciers in the Himalaya of Nepal. I am also a mountaineer. I love to climb. And so getting a chance to live abroad for a year amongst the biggest mountains of the planet and doing science, you know, with people in the local communities, as well as trekkers who would come through the tea houses and be wondering what I was up to, was just an amazing experience that I wanted to create for more people. I wanted more people to come to these places, incredible places like the Everest Base Camp Trek, but go deeper to really get more of an insight into what the landscape is telling us. There are stories, you know, in the rocks, and that's why I became a geologist. You know, I always loved being a detective and asking questions. And I wanted to be a secret agent, growing up as a kid. Like I loved all the spy stuff. But in reality, in my life, like being a detective for the planet and really understanding, there are stories that are hidden in the ice, right? But we can get to them before they disappear forever. And so telling people, when you come on these trips, if you were to come back, it's going to be different. I'll take Kilimanjaro as an example, the trip that you were on in 2019. So I went for the first time in 2009 just to go climb it and took pictures of the glaciers. And then when I did this first Science in the Wild trip in 2017 and took another photo of those glaciers, there was 50% loss of the glacier just in that time frame. And then 2 years later, a little bit more loss. And then I just had a climber who asked to do some science on Kilimanjaro just in December. And I sent him with some of the sampling equipment. So really, you see these things changing before your eyes in real time, because often in geology, it's billions and millions of years in the past. And you see the rocks laid out on the ground. But with ice, it is kind of this living thing, right? It is changing in front of us. And so being able to take people to these different places, it's challenging, as you can attest to, Ron, right? It's challenging enough to climb the mountain, but then
It's challenging, I guess. I mean,
just a little.
That's fine. I didn't almost die.
Just breathing up there, right? Just breathing up there at 19,000 feet and then taking samples, trying to do science on top of that. I think it gives people an appreciation for what it is that scientists do, for what they're willing to risk to get at answers. For me, it really is just this love for the planet. It always has been from a very young age. And now it's an ability through Science in the Wild to share it with more people, because you're not only teaching them about the science, but they're reaching personal goals in cases of, like, say, the summit of Kilimanjaro, or with Jason, experiencing Baffin Island. You had studied these glaciers from above, right? But what is it like being on it, on foot, in polar bear terrain, right? Where there's real danger. You really realize what scientists do risk. And there is that element of exploration that unfortunately gets really lost, right? Like we don't really explore very much anymore because there's so much that has already been done. So giving people kind of a taste of that is what Science in the Wild is about as well, while contributing to science, contributing knowledge to how that planet is changing.
That was wonderful. That's one of the reasons I wanted everyone on here tonight to be on this conversation, to talk about the amazing things that you do. Graham, you're next. Like what you do with Blue, and there's so much that you have in so many ways. There's also, I kind of want to take a moment to talk about all the stuff that you do for the organizations that you work with, but also what you do separately with Janet's Planet. You go on the show and you share your love of what the world is and what life is and what we might find out there. And you also are the best in saying you're an astrobiologist. And I know few. I don't even know. I love David Grinspoon. I love the Fungi Spoon. But I've never heard him say, maybe there's no life out there at all. And you're happy to say that. You're happy to talk about what might not be. And I love that about you, your honesty about that. And you're also willing to bring us all back to reality when you talk about that. So I want to talk about the work you do with the organizations you work with, like Blue and so on. So let's talk about that. And then let's kind of talk about life that's out there. Maybe. Maybe. Where are we going to find it?
Yeah, so lots of things there. I work for Blue Marble Space. I do communications and marketing with Blue Marble Space, which when I was earning my PhD in geology and focusing on research in astrobiology, and I also had the chance to go to the high Arctic, to Ellesmere Island, about 500 miles shy of the North Pole, to a very intriguing site. And I was there to study some things going on at a glacier, but not for the glaciology itself, rather for the connections of the microbiology, the biology at that site, the geochemistry going on at that site, and how it connects to Europa. And there's also some geology from that region that's very connected to our research on Mars as well. And so there are places on Earth we can go to study not just our changing world here, but also to understand more about other worlds and potential for life out there. But while I was working on my PhD, I realized I really like talking to people about science. I was volunteering at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. I was giving talks whenever I could. I was judging science fairs with children. And every time I had a chance to make connections with someone, just to talk about not just the science, but also the culture and the history and the philosophy and everything about what it means to be human and going on this endeavor to understand who and what we are. Every time I had those moments, it made me realize more and more that I wanted to do that more as my career. I wanted to communicate and talk with people. And so doing science communication is something that's very important to me. I do a lot of different panels and webinars and podcasts and things like that. So after I finished my PhD, I technically am a research scientist with Blue Marble Space Institute of Science, which is our research branch. So I do some research that way. I also mentor interns. Last summer, I had 19 interns working with me on 2 different projects. I think I might have 3 projects this summer, bringing on a bunch more undergraduate and recent grad students to do some research, to do some science communication with me. I also work for the Center for Life Detection at NASA Ames. Right now, we're developing a series of tools for helping us understand how we search for life out there. One of these tools we're actually working on right now, it's called the Knowledge Base for Life Detection. We have groups of scientists working together to develop our knowledge of what biosignatures are, what signs of life are, and how we can use them in our future missions in going to places like Mars with Percy, or Europa with the Clipper, or Dragonfly going to Titan. We have a lot of cool missions coming up and a lot more that aren't even concepts yet that will happen in the near future that will allow us to see if there was any other life or is any other life elsewhere in our solar system. And then right now we're also looking at the next generation of space telescopes. James Webb Space Telescope, which will hopefully at some point eventually launch, has a great chance to give us so much information about the chemistry of atmospheres and exoplanets. There's a whole bunch of other proposed next generation space telescopes that I would love to see get funded that would help us to understand whether or not we can find life out there, whether or not we can find signs of technology, of industrial activity out there. We call those technosignatures. And people are working right now to see if that's out there as well. And honestly, you hear people romanticize sometimes, like that phrase where, I was born, 200 years too late to be a pirate and 200 years too soon to be in Star Trek traveling through the universe. And that's not really fair. That romanticizes things, because 200 years ago, yeah, you might have been a pirate, but you might have had, a lot of issues with disease. A lot more children were dying in childbirth and at very young ages.
Jimmy Buffett made it look really beautiful.
Yeah.
I love Jimmy,
it's
but
easy to romanticize sometimes, but we have no idea what 200 years in the future is going to be like. And 200 years in the past wasn't the best for everybody. And even now we still have some trouble around our world, but you start going back in the past and things get pretty dark. And so right now is actually a pretty groovy time to be alive, especially for asking this question of whether or not we're alone in the universe. And I think it's important. We do have to say we could be alone, because we do not know. This is the only example that we have of life so far.
Wait, pause. I love when the astrobiologist like Graham loves saying we might be alone. And he's about to he's going to mess with you in a minute. And here he goes.
Yeah, I mean, so we have to admit, if you use logic and you say that all I know is this, then we can't say whether or not for sure alien life is out there. But then, you start thinking, you start feeling a little bit of what it means to be alive in this cosmos. And you start looking at some of the data we already have. So the number keeps changing drastically, but as of right now, there's over 4,400 confirmed exoplanets. Most of those are in a very small area of space in the galaxy, very close to our solar system.
Is there life? It's billions and billions.
And so by just even this small number that we found so far, and we also, by the way, we are very biased towards certain kinds of planets so far. There's a lot of observational bias in the kinds of planets we can see. And so there's probably way more than what we've even seen already just in those star systems we've already found planets in. And so that by itself tells us there could be several hundreds of billions, maybe even trillions of planets in our galaxy. And maybe many of those planets aren't habitable. Maybe life can't survive on them or in them, or life couldn't originate on them. But with that many worlds out there, it just starts to feel like, man, there needs to be something else. And so, you have that thing that people call the Fermi paradox, even though it's not a paradox. It's more the Fermi question of where are they? And we don't know. We don't know. Maybe it's a cosmic zoo. Maybe they're not talking to us yet because we're not cool enough yet to join the party. Or maybe most life out there hasn't really advanced that far yet. There's a lot of possible things that could be going on with life out there in the cosmos. But when you start thinking about whether or not there could be life out there, it feels like there needs to be something else, and we won't know unless we go out and explore. Which is why we do things like sending that robot Percy to Mars. It's why we have all these missions going out and exploring. It teaches us more about our own place in the cosmos, and that's crucial to us really better knowing who we are.
Yeah, beautifully stated. So, Jason, I'm going to go to you next. You worked at NASA, and you worked there. I think while you were there, it was Constellation, and you took certain things, and there were certain things that beat you down in a way, and that you're mad about because, and you should have been mad about this. And I'm not trying to say this or put words in your mouth, but you have every single thing that should make an astronaut, and at a time, because of who you love and who you care about, there were things that stopped you from that. And now it's a totally different world, and you were the lead for that. I mean, what you have done with Project Possum is mind-blowing. It's been on TV shows. You have connected so many people from around the world, and you are so humble about it that it's not you, that you don't want to put it all on yourself, like what you've created. And it's this beautiful thing. And so I want to take some time to talk about Possum. And I want to take some time and talk about what it is and how people can be involved. And there's something that I want to share with people tonight too, that if you're watching this, Jason has this program that I don't care where you come from, you can be involved. I barely had my GED. I barely had some time in a community college, and Jason could not wait for me to be involved with this, and did everything he did to make sure that I could be a part of what was going on in his world. He wants to have everyone that wants to be involved in astronautics, and it is the most beautiful thing in the world, and I love this. And he will never, ever take credit for the thing that he's created in a way that's true, but it's the most beautiful thing in the world, and he is the best person I've ever met, and it's so awesome. So I want you to talk about this a little bit and how people can be involved, that you don't have to be a PhD, that if you want to be involved in Project Possum in this citizen science astronautics program, you have a way in, because you have created every single possibility for people to be a part of this. So that's what I want to share with people tonight, with you talking about this incredible program that you've created. And you're muted. Almost. There you go. And there you go. Now you're muted.
Did I lose you? Okay, I'm coming through.
There you go.
Ron,
there you go.
I don't know how
There you go.
Ron, thank you for the kind words, and I am so glad that the program has touched you that way. I look at my own background and some of the big influences I had. And I think one of the greatest privileges I've had in life is growing up in a home full of books. With a career aviator that was my grandfather in particular, and one of the stories I always like to share is that my granddad commanded B-25s in the war, and one of the people that served under him was Joseph Heller, who later wrote Catch-22. And Joseph Heller based all the fictional characters in his book on the real life people that he'd served with. Well, Granddad happened to be fictionalized as Colonel Cathcart, who was kind of the chief antagonist. So I'm Colonel Cathcart's grandson. So that's kind of how I grew up, was in this world of aviation, but also with everything Apollo and what the space program was doing and the people that were leading that were so inspirational. And I think that gave me an early appreciation for education and an appreciation for science from the start. And then thinking about, and this has been brought up a couple times, Gene Roddenberry was a revolutionary. He put things out in the future, was a world that he thought that we could aspire to. And so in some ways, it's important to have that optimistic future that we can hopefully lay the seeds to build, and yet at the same time dealing with an existential threat like climate change. There's these two radical futures, one that will slowly lead us into this dark abyss, and one that will create this infinite horizon. And here we are today between the two. And I realized that the astronaut itself is this ambassador to STEM, and how can we get more people involved in, especially with the onset of these commercial vehicles, like the opportunity for people to be a part, maybe be a part on these missions themselves. So the possum is really growing, and I always like to defer it because there's so many people leading different things. It's one of our members called it a starfish.
Yeah.
That there's so many things in tiers of science and education outreach and outreach programs themselves that come together. So we do aeronomy, which is my background coming in. We've been working with bioastronautics, a spacesuit test, microgravity sciences, work with the National Research of Canada. I mean, we do probably 20 different experiments every campaign we do there. We do human factors, human performance, and spacesuits. We have a post-landing laboratory in Connecticut with Survival Systems USA. We have a gravity offset lab that we built in partnership with the Canadian Space Agency, where we're testing EVA spacesuits in gravity offset and soon underwater environments. So it's, we're building new simulations, facilities to do and understand new science and technology, and we're doing this largely privately funded. We're finding ways to turn our members into the heroes that they should be. Like, why do our heroes always have to be entertainers? That's great. We have amazing entertainers, but why can't we also be scientists that are, putting the neck out like Uli does, chasing around, the world looking for information. There's good personal stories here, and there's personal stories tied with the whole history of astronautics. So there's nothing quite like an astronaut to inspire people, and that's what, at least it has been that way for me. So creating this program was an extension of that, and I could talk a little bit about the aeronomy aspect if you want me to continue on. So
many people don't know what aeronomy is, and I love that we talked about this earlier. I didn't know it before I came in, and I mean, it's such a big deal because it's a part of the atmosphere that we don't really truly understand, and we do now because of you and the work that you do, and it's amazing. So yes, please share that with us.
So aeronomy, again, is the science of the upper atmosphere, so above the stratosphere. And the mesosphere is probably the most sensitive part of our planet. So like small changes here, if we make changes in concentrations of CO2 or methane in our lower atmosphere, we can observe it gets convected through gravity waves, through these transport mechanisms to our upper atmosphere. And we can observe changes in our upper atmosphere. And the biggest visible, observable in our mesosphere is what's called a noctilucent cloud. And so you can see these in the high latitudes in the summertime. And that's been a focus of our program. We have been doing airborne campaigns, and one of the most recent ones has actually been with the Canadian Air Force, which is an incredible opportunity, getting to work backseat in a supersonic jet trainer with camera systems and chasing these clouds in northern Alberta, which is absolutely amazing experience to do science in this cramped fighter jet backseat. The one of the main things that we launched, our senior scientist on this, Dr. Dave Fritz, as the PI of NASA's PMC Turbo. We built a lot of the hardware for these camera systems that launched. Really, we're able to see the mesospheric dynamics on meter resolution. So what that means is we're observing turbulence better than any place we could possibly observe in the solar system. So onset, dissipation, the turbulence, what are the dynamics? How does this relate to to our understanding of the mesosphere. How can we better model the whole dynamical spectrum of the model of the mesosphere? Why is that important? Well, global climate change is a big one. Because of the way these observables are changing, noctilucent clouds are coming to lower latitudes, they're becoming more intense, and we know that's because of the things that start any cloud: cold temperatures and water vapor. Methane gets convected up, methane photodisassociates to water vapor, CO2 acts as a net cooling agent because it warms the lower atmosphere, it cools the upper atmosphere. So these are two things that we think are increasing the presence of these clouds. We just talked about Mars. We're going to have a helicopter on Mars. Well, how do we think we designed that helicopter? Well, we understand our mesosphere, for one. A low density atmosphere here on our planet, compared to planetology, helps us design vehicles that can operate in other low density atmospheres like on Mars.
Love it, man. That's awesome. So what I want to do is tonight I want to give everyone like a couple minutes before we go to our last music that we have, which is my favorite song, which will be like 7 minutes long, I think. Right, Uli?
Yeah, it's going to be a long time of me holding the laptop.
Yep. So what I want to do is, like, it's 9:40 right now, so I'm going to give each of you some time to talk about all the awesome work that you do, and like share with our everyone that's watching tonight. So, Uli, I'll go with you first and share with everyone the awesome work that you do, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so when it comes to science in the wild, so obviously with the pandemic, we haven't been able to run expeditions. But if you navigate to the webpage, there are been doing blog posts every week called Science Wednesdays to keep the public informed about cool scientific topics or relevant scientific topics. There's also, you can read about past field experiences to see what you would be getting yourself into if you were to sign up for one of these trips. But then I've also had the opportunity to be teaching homeschooled students actually up in Alaska, which has been a really interesting experience because, like I mentioned at the very beginning of this show, I've been doing some work with the Alaska Climate Research Center, and the Arctic and parts of Alaska are really sensitive to climate change. So it's definitely been eye-opening for me, who spent a lot of my research in the Andes, the Himalayas, everywhere except in the US, to be really understanding more about how one of our states here is changing so rapidly. Alaska is a huge state. It's got so many different microclimates as well. And it's just, having worked at this job for about since August, it's just incredible to watch how the climate has been changing, because I'm writing all the reports on a monthly basis, on an annual basis of how things are changing. So again, wanting to bring that science to the people is really important to me. So I'm using multiple avenues to do that, through teaching of college students, through my work in Alaska right now throughout this pandemic, which has not allowed me to travel or go on these expeditions, and then continuing to get people excited about science through Science in the Wild, to realize, the pandemic will end at some point here. We're all going to want to go out and travel and experience the world, but hopefully we'll have a much better appreciation for life, and for adventure and exploration, realizing the time is now to go do these things, to see these things, to get involved, to be good stewards, of the planet. And that's what I'm really trying to foster with Science in the Wild. And I wanted to just share, it's a very long quote, but you may be familiar with it, from Richard Feynman, that talked, I have it actually written, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the part I wanted to reference was the first part of it. Said, Richard said, "I have a friend who's an artist and has sometimes taken a view which I don't agree with very well. He'll hold up a flower and say, 'Look how beautiful it is,' and I'll agree. Then he says, 'I as an artist can see how beautiful this is, but you as a scientist take this all apart and it becomes a dull thing.' And I think that he's kind of nutty." And I definitely agree with that. What Richard Feynman was saying is, like, I do not understand how understanding more about this flower, about the cells that make it up, about how this life exists in this flower, how that actually subtracts from the beauty of the flower. I see science as only enhancing that beauty and that understanding. And so with Science in the Wild, I'm striving to do something similar, for people to have an understanding of the natural world, to be in awe of it, to learn, the secrets that it has to tell us. And again, to be these stewards, we may lose these things, especially glaciers. And so really just trying to emphasize there's so much still left to learn about the natural world. Let's get out there and explore.
Beautifully stated. Graham, I'm going to go to you next.
Yeah, I love what Ulia said a lot, and I agree entirely. Something that happened today on Twitter, because of the Percy landing and people talking about the awesomeness of landing this rover on Mars and things that are coming up, a hashtag started trending. And we see this every time we have a big mission, that some people question, why do we spend money on space when we have issues here? Why do we want to build a rover and send it to Mars when we can fix things here? And I always have so many problems with those comments. And first off, a lot of people will always point out, like the actual budget of NASA is an extremely small amount compared to other things like the defense budget. A $2.5 billion rover is not all that bad when you think about a $12 billion cruise ship for our battleship for the military, and how much money we spend on some of our jets and some other things like that. But outside of that, it's weird. Like, almost everyone I know who's involved in space exploration is also really, really, really interested in sustainability and building a better world here on Earth, on helping our environment, on being good stewards in our environment, in our biosphere. And so I find it strange to think there's a disconnect, that by somehow putting money into space exploration to learn more about our place in the universe, that somehow we're not also going to be working here. Especially when, by going to space, we learn so much about our own world. And I actually have two passages I'd like to share from some books. One of them is David Grinspoon's Earth in Human Hands. Very good book.
Love Dave. The Funky Spoon.
The Funky Spoon, Dr. Funky Spoon. I highly recommend it for those who are interested in climate science and how that connects to space. And early in the book, Dave is talking about what we learn about our world from other planets. And so he writes, in visiting these terrae incognitae, so other worlds, above and beyond the surface and the land, we first saw Earth whole and could begin to see the path that planetary evolution took here as only one of many possible paths. And I love that for several reasons, but I think the most important thing there is that by going to Venus and studying Venus, we started learning more about our own atmosphere. We started asking, could a runaway greenhouse effect happen here? By studying a world like Mars and seeing how cold it is, it taught us a lot more about the benefits of our magnetic field and how our atmosphere works. We're learning so much more about by going out there and studying. And then another book I'd like to share something from is one of my favorites of all time. It's Star Maker by Olaf Stapledon. I highly recommend this book for those who are into science fiction and the philosophy of consciousness. It's a story, it's a fable of a person's consciousness leaving their body, traveling beyond the Earth, and traveling out into the universe, and starting to change their consciousness into the consciousness of a star system, into the consciousness of a galaxy, and becoming a cosmic consciousness. It's a very enjoyable read if you're into that kind of thing. But in the introduction to the book, so right after he finished writing this book, he put together a short few-page introduction talking about how some people might view him considering the potential for leaving our planet and traveling elsewhere to be problematic when we have so many problems here on Earth to face. And so this is one of my favorite passages from that. Perhaps the attempt to see our turbulent world against the background of stars may, after all, increase, not lessen, the significance of the present human crisis. It may also strengthen our charity toward one another. I love that because he wrote this in 1937. He wasn't talking about the coronavirus pandemic that we're facing right now. He wasn't talking about issues in political divide over understanding climate change. He wasn't talking about anything that we're facing right now directly. What he was speaking about was actually what was going on in Europe in 1937. And for those who don't know, Europe was on its way directly into World War II at that point, and a lot of people saw it coming. They saw atrocities on their way from the actions going on with the Nazi Party in Germany. Already, people were aware of some of these issues. And so when he wrote this story, we had not yet traveled into space. He wrote this story just slightly after we learned that other galaxies even exist in the first place. It would still be nearly 20 years before humans would end up traveling, actually over 20 years before humans would end up traveling to space when he wrote that. And yet he was able to kind of foresee that by this understanding of seeing our world as it is, as a rock in space, and all of us together sharing it, that by itself might give us enough understanding of ourselves to maybe actually start working on some of these problems that we're creating for ourselves. And so even though he wasn't directly speaking to our time, I think those words will last forever and will always be important for us to carry with us as we consider our place on this planet, and if and when we go to other worlds as well.
I picked the best guest. I do. I mean, you're all amazing. Thank you so much for being on tonight. Uli, I think, are you all ready?
Yes, we're going to end up using my laptop for it.
Yeah, that's perfect. So we're going to end tonight with my absolute favorite song ever. And Ricardo's going to play our favorite song, my favorite song ever, which is Scenes from an Italian Restaurant by Billy Joel. And I love this song. I love the hell of it. And we're going to wrap this up. It's been an incredible conversation. What I love about this is that I have challenged people for months about this, that I was going to do this show. Please show up if you are a skeptic for this. I have the best people in the world. They are brilliant. If you have questions, please come. No one has presented anything to me tonight, which means that I hope that they watch this show. And we've had tons of people. We still have a bunch of people watching this show that they've been here. They've been in the conversation. They've listened, and they have been totally behind this. And I'm so happy for that, that we've asked. If you have questions, you can still have questions that you can send to us. If you're any type of skeptic, but I cannot be more honored that we had the people that were here tonight. Thank you, Jason, Dr. Reimuller. Thank you, Dr. Lau. Thank you, Dr. Horodyskyj-Pena, with her new last name. I wonder why. And the most amazing thing I've ever been honored to be was a part of your wedding, and like the life that you have now just still continues to make me so happy that you have. There's no one that has the ability to share the most incredible life that you all have together. So thank you for being here with us tonight, both of you. And for my favorite song, I'm so stoked right now. They're going to do Scenes from an Italian Restaurant as we finish up tonight.
Yeah, it's a great song.
Slow down.
Good choice, Ron. I love this tune by Billy Joel. Hope you enjoy. Bottle of wine, a bottle of red, perhaps a bottle of rosé instead. We'll get a table near the street in a old familiar place. You and I, face to face. A bottle of red, a bottle of white, and all depends upon your appetite. I'll meet you anytime you want. Our Italian
restaurant.
for it. Wait for it. Oh, it's about to get real.
It's okay with me these days. Got a good job, got a good old face, got a new
Wife, got a new life, and a family.
Oh, I lost touch long ago. Last week, I did not know you would ever look so nice after so much shine. You remember those days hanging out at Village Green? Engineer boots, leather jackets, and dark blue jeans. Drop it down in the box, please, sort of our New Orleans.
Wait for it. Wait for it.
Go there, highlights, my sweet romantic teenage nights.
Oh my man. Whoa. Whoa. Whoa.
Rendering it with the bomb to his steps, the king and the queen of the prom. Riding around with a car top down to the radio. Nobody looked and
It's fine now.
the head of the parkway diner. We never knew we could want more than that of the line. Surely rendering it would always the hardest of life. Oh, oh, rendering it was still going steady in the summer of 75. Look at the sign of the marriage be at the end of July. Everyone said we were crazy. Whether you know that you're much too lazy, and then it could never afford to live that kind of life. Oh, but then we were within Brenda and Eddie goodbye. Oh, oh, oh. Now we got an apartment with deep mud cabins and a couple of paintings to see us. They go to bed with a bomb with a bread they save for a couple of beers. Decided to fight when the money got tight. Just didn't count the days. Whoa, oh, yeah, rock and roll. Woo! Well, I lived for a while in the very nice style, but it's always the same in the end. Got the boss is a matter of course, and the part of the closest of friends. The king and the queen went back to the green, but you can never go back there again. Oh, oh, oh. Reverend Eddie had it already by the summer of 75. They had to belong to the end of the show for the rest of their lives. To go back to the greasers, best they could do is pick out their faces. We always knew that we'd both find a way to get by. Oh, but there we were with him, Brenda and Eddie. Can't do you more, cause I told you already. Here we are with Brenda and Eddie goodbye.
Whoa. 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 And here we go. Break it down, Ricardo.
I'll meet you anytime you want. Now it's
Well,
time
your
to get ready.
restaurant.
I'll clap. Masterpiece, sir. Everybody clap. Yes, my man did the whole song for me too. Thank you so much. So what I want to let everyone know is that Ricardo does music multiple times during the week. If you don't have him on Facebook, Ricardo Pena, you can find him. We will put this out there. We will attach that to the live stream you've seen tonight, so that way you can find where he's at. You might get a bunch of friend requests, so people might want to attach you there, so that way they can. All you have to do is just throw him a couple bucks, send it to him via. So what multiple ways that can they give you money?
Oh
Good
yeah,
sir.
Venmo and GoFundMe.
Yes. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna attach that to it, so that way you can all do it. Tell him that you love him. He is the best of the best. Thank you to everyone that's been a part of this show tonight. I'm so happy to be back, and it's been an amazing conversation. We've listened to amazing music. You're all wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. It's been the best 2 hours ever, and we will talk to you all soon. I'll be back next week for another 2 hours. I have no idea what the conversation is going to be like yet, but we'll see. So, once again, thank you to our guests tonight, and we appreciate you. And we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Wait,
Ron.
let's do this.
Bye,
There
all.
we go.
Bye, Jason.
Here you go.